Okay, Senate Government Operations. It is Tuesday, February 16th. And we will today are going to look at, to begin with, are going to look at our Preparedness Bill, is what we're calling it, for lack of a better word. And we have Tucker and Ameren with us. We are, and I'm going to set a couple little ground rules here for people who might be watching or might join us. I don't think we have any guests with us yet today, but we don't use chat. Chat is used by Gail to post links or things that we might need to know, primarily links, I guess, or places where we can find information. But as committee members, we don't use chat, and we do not allow it to be used by participants in the room with us. So with that, let's just jump in, and Senator Collmore will be with us in just a minute. He had to go across the hall. How funny is that? Sorry. He had to go over to institutions this afternoon to present something. So we'll start with the Preparedness Bill, and we have it. It was emailed to us, and I assume it's posted. And
this was emailed to us by Tucker. Is that the bill we're talking about?
I don't remember if it was Tucker or Ameren that emailed it.
It's on our website.
Okay.
And I think it's under Ameren's name, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Senator Polina, I did forward that to you from Tucker, so it'll have my name on it, but it's Tucker's email.
So sorry, it's not the open meeting. Oh yeah, it's the government.
It says lessons learned bill.
I don't have that. Is that what it is? Sorry.
Yes,
On today's date, I have Ameren drafting request.
No, it came to us at 1:09 p.m.
Oh, it's in an email. Sorry.
Well, it is in an email, and it's probably also posted.
It's not posted. At least I couldn't find it on our thing, but I will look for it in email. Thank you.
So let's start walking through it. I think that we're pretty much at the point where we're ready to vote on it. Am I not?
Sorry,
am I wrong? We talked about it the other day, and we decided to wait, give it a little bit of time to sit there and gel. And I don't think there were any changes. Am I right about that, Tucker and Ameren? I don't think there were any changes from last time.
No.
So I think we
No
just
substantive
decided
changes.
to let it sit for a day, since we went through it on Friday and or whatever day that was. I know it wasn't Sunday, but other than that, I can't be sure. So hello, Senator Collmore.
And Ameren, this is draft 2.1. It is on our website. It's the same bill. It's just called Government Operations, Emergency Provisions, Open Meeting Law, Municipal. Yeah. And that's draft 2.1 is the latest.
Yes.
So does anybody have any questions, concerns about that bill?
No, I think we're good to go.
Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I arrived late.
No, that's
Just
fine.
left Senate institutions. Did I hear you say there aren't any changes? Oh, then I have no problems.
Although we put while you were in the 3 minutes that you were gone, we put a lot of things in there that to try to slip by you.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. No, for people out there who are watching, I'm sorry, that was meant to be a joke. We did not slip anything into this bill.
And it was taken as such.
Yes. So with that, do we have some kind of a motion?
I would move that we pass out favorably our lessons learned bill, I think it's drafting request 21-0002, and the draft number is 2.1.
And, and this would be a committee bill.
And this is a committee bill, and I would move that we view it favorably and pass it out accordingly.
Second.
All right, well, I'm going to suggest that since I think Senator Rahm is in her car.
I'm at my house and
you
I'm
are?
pulling up the record
Oh,
sheet.
okay.
So yeah, just walked in and need to print it, but I can call the roll and then proceed with printing it. Gail was good enough to update it for me this morning.
Good. All right.
Let me just open it and then I will call the roll. I need my computer to cooperate.
Senator Rom, I can take care of this today if you would like.
I do have it up now, so I'm fine to do it. And I just want to make sure that it's draft 2.1. And it is. Okay. Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Polina.
Yes.
Senator Rahm, yes. And Chairwoman White.
Yes.
Okay, I will. And then I can put the reporter of the bill, if that's applicable.
Who would like to, Senator Calmer, are you dying to report this bill?
Well, actually, Madam Chair, I thought since you had all the notes on it from last time.
I have no idea where they are. In the round bin somewhere.
Okay. If you
Well,
would like me
Tucker's-
to, go ahead.
Or if any, does somebody else want to do it? Because I think I'm going to probably do the elections bill maybe, and
Okay.
would like to not do all of them.
And Tucker would do a section by section anyway, right?
Well, but one writes one's floor speech, which is what the challenge is that poor Jeanette lost her wonderful floor speech on this. Yeah, frustrating.
The only thing I remember saying is that, remember, we've passed each of these things at least twice and sometimes 3 times. That's all I remember saying. Okay.
I'll be glad to do it, Madam Chair.
And Brian, if you need help on sections, I'm happy to take a section,
Okay. We might do that.
pass it around on whatever people think.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
You're most welcome.
Since we don't have any charters yet.
Right.
we're
Getting
getting
greased
them
up for the charters.
Poor Brian.
Oh,
But you,
I'm not sure that's poor Brian.
I know. Okay, so we are next going to take up do we have by any chance the Secretary of State people with us yet?
I don't see anybody in our
No.
way, but Gail would know better than we.
So Gail, maybe I think we're a little ahead of ourselves here.
Well, 45 minutes ahead.
Yeah, I've asked Rex Thompson to come back at 2:30 and
Ask
then
him, see if he can come back now.
I will do that.
Yeah, and also Chris and Lauren. So while we're looking at this, I think we had, and I'm going to talk about this one more time, and then I'm not going to talk about it anymore at all, is we had retirement on our schedule for Thursday, and I'm taking it off, given the fact that it doesn't make any sense for us to do anything until we know what the House is doing.
But we were
Or-
told this afternoon that the House is going first on it, which seems like added a little bit to my confusion about who's on first.
Right. Well, I think we're all in that boat, but I would agree with you, Chair. I think that's a wise idea. And although it would be, I'd love updates on how they're doing on it and what direction they're taking. So we'll hopefully get that fairly soon.
Well, I guess we can have that, or we can just wait until we get something from them.
Yep.
And then we'll have to do something, whatever we get to do something with. But I just am reluctant to use our time to.
I think you're wise. I think that's wise. I would say that to echo what you have said earlier today, I would encourage us all to listen to go attend Chris Rupe's or Roop's Pensions 101. He has another session this Friday at lunchtime, and I think the following Friday. And he's our newest analyst at JFO, and he's terrific. I thought it was excellent.
It was.
It
Yep.
was.
Yeah. Because it was to the point, and he said it in terms that even I could understand. I mean, just, it was real. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So I guess I didn't schedule that very well.
You did schedule it, just to take, we sped through that.
No, I mean today with the MMA. And what I also heard is that the House has an OPR bill, and we will add this and the notary thing to that when it comes over, if there needs to be any. So we actually wouldn't even have to take the testimony now, but I did not know that they were doing that until Friday. So, so we can, as soon as we get some people here, we can look at it, I guess. In the meantime, does anybody have anything they want to talk about?
Senator White, would you like to talk about bills in and bills out?
That's a
Sure.
great.
What do we have in?
Let's look.
If you like, I can bring it up and share my screen and you can take a look at it.
Okay.
Just let me get there. I will be there shortly.
Bills in. I got it pulled up here. We only have a few. We actually already have that House bill, the act relating to vital records, mausoleums, columbaria, and emergency health orders.
Yeah, we're not going to do that until after crossover.
Right. And then we have S15, an act relating to correcting defective ballots. Oh, it's
Yes.
up. Okay.
But we've put that into the elections bill.
Yep. And we've put in,
So we have 43
yeah,
and 50, which is ranked choice voting,
right.
and 51, which is the corporate contributions.
Well, maybe, is it the same? Is it the same bill as we passed last year? Is it exactly the same?
I believe,
Yes.
yes.
We could
S51 is.
chat about that for a bit, but and bring Keisha up to speed on that. That wouldn't be too difficult.
I'm here. I don't know if you, oh, you mean right now as a new member, sorry.
Yeah, no, I meant as a new member, because all of us passed that together last year. And then the last one we have, I think, is S78, the act related to binding interest arbitration for employees of the Vermont judiciary, which might be addressed with our temporary workers, the work we're doing in that other bill, which is not a bill, I guess. It's just a committee. Is that going to be a committee?
I don't know. I've asked them in light of what we heard around the issue of the temporary workers, is that my only issue is what, Gail, can we take this down so we can see each other?
I have a question, committee. Does anyone know Laura Lehman?
Yeah.
It looks like Lauren knows
Hibbert
her.
does.
Lauren is one of the attorneys for the Office of Professional Regulation, and we went to Utah together.
Okay, so I can admit her to the meeting then.
If Lauren says it's okay.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
All right, so my understanding was that I had thought we were going to start an OPR bill here, but I understand that it's in the House, that they're starting it. They are not, according to Representative Gannon, they are not looking at the issue of MMAs. And they are not looking at the issue that was brought up to us about the DOC workers and their issue with the being notaries. So I don't know if you want to talk to us about the notaries first, because we are expecting Mr. Thompson to join us, and Gail's trying to get a hold of him to let him know that we can talk about that. But I'd like to have him here when we talk about the MMAs. And MMA, for anybody who doesn't know, is mixed martial arts. So if you want to talk to us a little bit about the issue of the DOC workers with the notary issue, and if there needs to be a legislative fix or if it's administrative fix, I don't know. We just said we would take it up.
Good
Yeah.
afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Lauren Hibbert, Director of the Office of Professional Regulation. I'm very lucky to have Lauren Lehman here with me as well. She is an attorney with our office and has been working on MMA and notaries. But it would be helpful for me and for Lauren to understand what the articulated issue is with the DOC notarization. We haven't heard recently a concern from them.
I can read you the email that it's very short. Would that be okay, Madam Chair? From
Yes.
Joe Samsel in at Springfield. I'm reaching out to you about a concern that the Vermont Department of Corrections has been inadvertently omitted from the ex officio status from the Vermont Notary Public Law. I had worked hard to include the Vermont Department of Corrections and the Department of Children and Families previously, and for the last round of renewals, we were granted ex officio status. But somehow, when the law was modified, the Vermont Department of Corrections was dropped from the law enforcement related employees in the Notary Public Law. I can share that one of our roles as probation and parole officers is to swear out affidavits and violations that are submitted to courts, state's attorneys' offices, parole boards, and law enforcement agencies. I truly believe that this was merely an oversight, since DCF was one of the agencies carried forward. Unfortunately, we had to pay the renewal fee for this time around, but I'm wondering if this matter could be corrected for future registrations. Joe Samsel at the Springfield Probation and Parole in Springfield.
Thank you. Thank you. So what they're asking for is to be not required to register at all. And that would be a statutory fix that would need to occur. Is that correct, Lauren?
Lauren, you're muted.
Oh, she's dealing with, we both have children at home. I apologize in advance.
Oh,
It's okay.
Now she's okay.
Hi, all. Yes, my 9-year-old decided to come in just as you got to the question. Lauren Lehman, for the record, with the Office of Professional Regulation. Yeah, so the way the statutes have been amended, there's an exception for law enforcement related employees that exempts them completely from the notary statute when they are notarizing documents within their official duties. So if Department of Corrections were added to this, they would be completely exempt both from having to get a commission, but also all unprofessional conduct and any other form of regulation while performing notarization as part of their official duties.
So it isn't just the fee. They would not have to register at all.
That's correct. That's what they're asking for.
Oh, really? My sense was all he was caring about was the fee.
Well, he's asked.
Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
All right.
It may have been what he was concerned about, because that's what came to light, but he would, if they fell within this exemption, there are other exemptions. There's a judicial related employee. There's fee exemptions for justices of the peace and town clerks. But and those other exemptions are more limited. But for the law enforcement related employees, the exemption is carte blanche. It would be no commission, no continuing education, no examination, no fee. No even answering. We have mandatory fitness questions about having paid being current on taxes, current on child support, not applicable there.
So we exempted law enforcement from all of these because they're certified officers. They're already certified in their profession. But DOC probation officers are not certified in any way. They're a probation officer. I could be a probation officer. I mean,
We have to train for it. I mean, there's a lot of training involved in education.
To be a probation officer?
Yeah, I want to assume. I mean, you don't, and it's.
I mean, I don't know. They're not certified. They're not licensed. They're not registered.
Are they not certified?
No.
Yeah, I don't think there's any particular requirements. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
No.
I had friends who were probation officers years ago, and they didn't seem particularly official.
No. You apply for a job with corrections and yeah.
Is there no way we can just exempt the fee and not have them be exempt from all that other stuff? I mean, why can't we do a narrow exemption?
Yes, that's what I was leading to, is that we exempted the certified law enforcement officers because they are already licensed or certified or regulated somehow by another entity.
My impression is, and we'll hear, I don't know if Rex Thompson is the head of probation officer.
No, he has nothing to do with probation. He's MMA.
Oh, he's MMA. Okay. So on the notary issue, I think my understanding is the fee is the issue, not being exempt from anything else. So if we craft a narrow exemption, I would boldly propose that's what we want to do here, not anything more.
Is that doable, Lauren? Is it confusing in your office?
Well, one should always surround yourself with other people with your same name. So it's not confusing. It's just we never know which Lauren is responsible for the task, but it adds to hilarity.
Yes, I had two boyfriends once at the same time named Tom. It was very easy.
It does. And you always get somebody.
Depending on what gets revealed.
Sorry about that, Senator Collmore.
That's fine, Madam Chair.
I'm always saying things that I shouldn't, but.
We live to show.
So,
Madam Chair, is it possible? Yes. We have other groups that are exempt from the fee. Our system can accommodate that. I just, notaries has kicked up ongoing concern since it traveled to OPR, and there's been modifications every year. So I would love to wrap up any other modifications that may be happening in notaries. I know that's not possible always, but There is computer design expense for these changes. So if we make them exempt from the fee, not only are we not getting that $15, which doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it cumulatively starts to add up and supports our overall administration. But we also have to spend money to make them not have to pay the fee, if that makes sense. So if there's going to be other changes to notaries that are foreseeable, it would be good if we could collect them into this bill. But if this is, the change that's required now, that certainly is well within your policy decision-making ability, and we can accommodate it. These changes do have effects for us logistically, and then also in communication, because we will have to communicate this out. So it has, it's not a simple change for the office. We can accommodate it. It's not simple. It does have a cost attached to it, and it does have a outreach operations cost outside of the computer costs.
Senator Clarkson?
So Lauren, do we know how many parole officers are notaries? How big is this universe? How much money are we exempting? We're not exempting them from continuing ed or anything else. So we want them to, and who else falls into the category of just fee exemptions, not the rest of everything else? You said clerks, town clerks?
Town clerks, justices of the peace. Am I missing anybody, Lauren?
DCF, they implied that DCF was included in this group.
So judicial related employees are exempt from the fee, and I believe CE, continuing education, and the exam. And then law enforcement related employees are exempt from everything, and that includes law enforcement employees who work for DCF.
Okay.
And then there's the town officials who have exemptions from the fee, and just town clerks, assistants, and justices of the peace. And then attorneys are exempt from continuing education and the exam, I believe, but not the fee. So this would be the fifth layer of exemption. We could probably include them with town clerks, assistants, and justices of the peace.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It doesn't sound like it's cutting a lot of new cloth.
No, it's not, Senator Clarkson. It is a system change because we have to change the application flow so that when they answer questions, they're exempt from the fee. It's possible to do. And the exact number of them, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to come back to you.
It would be great at least to, I can email Joe and ask, but it would be great to know that. My guess is it's not too many more than we have prisons.
In prisons?
No, I said it's probably not too many more than we have physical prisons. I mean, they are embedded in a prison. And
no, they're not. Probation and parole officers are in the field.
No, I know, but are the it's just all probation. Oh yeah, so let's get a sense of the number. It's bigger than I thought. I thought these were people who were working at the prison, but you're right. It's just probation.
Yeah, probation and parole
everywhere.
Are not in the prison. They're out in the field.
Yeah, no, I realized that. I for some unknown reason thought that the notaries were the people who also notarized were in the prison. But let's get a sense of the universe so that we understand. But it is sort of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I mean, it's all state government. So exempting one branch. Anyway.
With respect, it's not exactly borrowing Peter to pay Paul because we are a special fund. So we're not supported by the general fund. So the way that we support ourselves is through licensing fees. So if our revenue is decreased, our other licensees have to make up the cost of the administration.
So let's find out what the population is.
That makes sense to me.
Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Lauren, if we were to exempt them, have they already paid a fee this year, and would you have to reimburse them? And the second part of it is, since we're already doing it for town clerks, I guess I'm a little unclear why it's complicated for you to do this with the parole officers. Isn't it just a check mark in a kind of a PDF type of situation?
So to the first question, I would ask that you not require us to reimburse fees. This would be more applicable when they renew again in 2023. And to the second question, this is not a PDF application. We have a system, we call it Next Generation Licensing Platform. It's actually very smart. Depending on which questions you ask, it charges you different fees. So we'd have to add a question, a radio button essentially saying, are you a probation, parole, or a DOC employee, to the computer system. And then the computer system would have to know to not charge you a fee. And again, it's very possible we have this workflow for town clerks. Just, I mean, Lauren's testimony actually spoke to how complicated this profession has become. We have 1,000 different exemptions and different fees and different requirements depending on who you are. And the system has been able to manage that very, very well. But it does add design expense is my only point. And I don't know how much it would be because I can come back with that response, but I wasn't totally sure what the issue was, so I wasn't sure how to come to the committee with the response.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion? If they're not going to be renewing until 2023, my suggestion is that we let this so that we can have a better understanding of what other tweaks might have to be made, is that we not deal with this until the 2022 session. Then we can have a better understanding and we don't have to make tweak. We can do it all. If there are other things that come up, we can do it all at the same time, which would make it easier for OPR. It would make it less cumbersome in terms of educating people and having to send out notices all the time to different people. And it would still give time to do it before their next renewal. Senator Clarkson?
Oh, Lauren Lehman had a question for me, but then I have.
Lauren Lehman, for the record, I just had a question about who we should consider as well. We received an email this past spring from an official with the Northwestern Vermont Correctional Facility who was inquiring about notaries at the prisons. And so I'm not sure if this would include those individuals as well, or if it would be the probation officers or anybody employed by the Department of Corrections. So having that understanding would also help us kind of build a more comprehensive approach to this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Thank you.
So
Senator Clarkson?
Does everybody now renew at exactly the same time? So they just renewed in January of 21?
Yes, that is correct. We put everybody on the same renewal date, and it is January of odd years. And the Office of Professional Regulation would prefer your approach, Madam Chair, and we will put it onto the OPR bill issue list if that is the approach the committee decides to go.
And it gives us an opportunity to collect those pieces.
Senator Rahm?
I wondered if I could have a little bit of leeway to discuss a tangential issue while we're just talking about the schedule of OPR questions.
Yeah.
Thanks. So it's been brought to my attention from constituents that at after school providers, they're struggling to hire the often people of color that they'd like to hire into those roles because of some educational requirements. And I just wondered if that was on your radar to change, because it sounds worthy of addressing sooner than later so they can make some of those more flexible hiring decisions to support the needs of their kids.
Unfortunately, Senator Rahm, we do not regulate childcare workers in any way.
Okay.
That is the Agency of Human Services.
Okay, I thought they were asking me to connect with OPR about, it was like a Boys and Girls Club, which sounds like it's completely separate.
That is not within our jurisdiction. I believe that's through the Child Development Center with AHS.
Okay, thanks.
So are we agreed that we should just put the whole notary issue off until next January? And by then we'll have a better understanding of the universe of people that might have some, because if they just, people might pop up throughout the year and ask for changes or whatever, and then we can do it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
In between, Lauren Lehman, would you be kind enough to just send us the list of the exemptions?
Absolutely. We actually, we have a great FAQ on our website as well that lays out the exemptions. It also discusses law enforcement. So we've done a lot of outreach around this because there's so many notaries and there's a lot of exemptions. So we've got some great resources, and I'm happy to send those to Gail. Thanks.
And when
Thank
you
you.
say we have a lot of notaries, how many do we have?
I think we had about 12,500 or 13,000 in this last renewal cycle.
And that's, remember, cut down considerably as a result of the work we did on this, because there used to be like almost double that.
There used to be 17,000, I think, and so we're down about 50%. Yeah.
But we were told we'd be down to 50 if we imposed all of this.
That's certainly not been the case.
I know.
And,
But that was the scare tactic.
That was.
Well, I am, as the executor of my mother's estate, I have to say I'm very grateful every time I use a notary. And I've been using a lot of the services of one particular notary. So I'm very grateful.
play a very important role.
Okay, so we're agreed on, we don't have to talk about notaries again. I said that maybe I was going to put on, and when you wanted to know what we were going to do, is that we're going to just do away with everything we've done and go back to the old system. That's what we want to do.
I don't know how I would have responded.
We have
That's why we didn't do it.
I will say that we do have a notary issue that we will want attention on, which is remote notarization. And I do think that we will want some committee attention to that issue. And I would let Chris Winter speak to that.
Oh, why didn't we get that in our preparedness bill?
Yeah.
Or is this an ongoing issue?
It is an ongoing
Okay.
change of law issue.
Okay.
Does it
You
have
want-
immediacy need?
What?
Does it have, is it immediately needed? Is it needed now? I mean, to go to Jeanette's point, do we want an amendment? Is it?
No, not on our preparedness bill, because that deals only with emergency situations. So if this is an ongoing permanent change that needs to be made, Chris, do you want to talk to us about that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Winters, Deputy Secretary of State, for the record. This is about a long-term vision for the future of digital land records and the ability to do remote, very much remote real estate transactions. And so you have a number of interests, a number of stakeholders really interested in this, in the banking association and the realtors and the title insurance companies. So what we're doing is kind of lining up the building blocks that we need for that. There is in the notary law the ability for the Secretary of State to adopt remote notarization, remote online notarization, which is different from what we've done in the emergency rule. So to answer Senator Clarkson, yes, it would be great to have right now, but we don't have the building blocks in place for that yet. And part of that is the Uniform Real Property Electronic Recording Act. It's one of those Uniform Law Commission acts that standardizes how you deal with electronic land records, because as it sits right now, each town, each municipality might be developing a different way of handling electronic land records, a different vendor. This puts some basic standards around that so that we're all kind of moving in the same direction, so that eventually OPR can say, here's how you do remote notarization with an electronic seal, with the appropriate software, with the appropriate security. And we know that it'll fit in and allow you to record transactions into the electronic land records. So this is a long view building blocks kind of thing involving a uniform law on real estate recordings and digital records. So that's, we're proposing to have that be a committee bill in House Government Operations, and we're working toward that right now.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks. Senator Clarkson?
So to follow up on that, having dealt with a lot of uniform bills, do we know when that uniform bill will be presented to us? Or is it finished? I mean, is it ready for us to consider in Vermont?
The uniform bill is, and we would take the elements of that that make sense for Vermont. The Vermont bill is not quite ready to be released into committee, and we've gotten permission from the House Government Operations Chair to work on that. And I'm not sure if that's Tucker or Ameren will be the lucky one to work on that. I think it might be Ameren because it has some notary elements to it, a few tweaks to the notary law that we need to make it work. So that might be another opportunity when this comes over to you to make any notary changes, but that's up to the committee.
I really think that other than this one thing, the remote notaries, that we should just back off until next year.
I absolutely endorse that approach.
11 months. We have 11 months to make it perfect.
Lauren?
Just wanted to tail back to what Chris was saying and what Senator Clarkson asked about remote online notarization. So we have the authority in the statute as it exists to allow remote notarization, still wet signatures, but looking at each other via audio visual communications. And we've adopted those rules. We have a guideline, a guidance document online to help folks comply with that. So that really was our, emergency way to address COVID. And we already have the authority to do it. So we don't need to add anything permanent in the statutes to change that.
Great. We love it when it already exists.
Any more questions about notaries or anything else you have just always been dying to ask Chris or Lauren?
When's our next trip?
Soon.
No trips right now.
I can't even go to Brattleboro. Come on.
Asia went to get her car fixed. I'd hunger just to do that.
I went to 2 grocery stores and the hardware store yesterday,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, that's about it. That's the extent of our adventures.
Yes.
I will say, Senator Clarkson, we're doing a lot of exciting work under that grant. And the grant work is continuing, even though the travel is not. So we're very excited. Lauren has just finalized rules for people, credential verification for people who are trained outside of the United States. We're working on a video and having it translated into many languages about who OPR is, working on the Nurse Compact. So there's a lot of moving parts to that grant, and a lot of progress has been made that we're very proud of and very excited for. So that travel was well worth it. The concepts live on, even though we will no longer be in an airplane altogether for the foreseeable future.
Or on a gondola together.
I did
So-
hear from, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we did hear from one of the service credential verification service people to give us input on those new Americans licensing
Right.
laws. Yeah.
Right. Yes, that's terrific. That's good. That's going to be very important.
So I just am going to make a suggestion here. I know it probably doesn't affect you at all, but the other day I had to, around my vaccine, I had to call the Department of Health. And they went through this whole instruction thing. And then it said, if you need help with in a different language, and I don't know what the next comment was, but it does seem to me that maybe that should be the very first thing. If you're having translations, that when I call my credit card company, it says, if you want to continue in English, press 1. And I assume then it says, if you want to continue in something else, it says press 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. But to give a long explanation and instructions and then ask if you need help isn't helpful. So
No.
I would say that whatever you do, if you do anything on the phone like that, give those options first.
Have you given Ginny that feedback or emailed that to Dr. Levine?
You know, I haven't had time to even.
Yeah, I know.
No.
When you have a moment, I bet that would be helpful.
So anything else?
Not on notaries, but we are here to talk about MMA as well.
Yes, and we see Mr. Thompson has joined us. So let us just, I know that the whole issue that Lauren, you indicated that you had been working on some language around MMA, but I think what I'll do is ask Mr. Thompson if he would like to just express his concerns and what we heard from him to kind of set the stage for us. And then we also have heard from the Vermont Association of Pediatric something or others. I don't remember the title, and Dr. Bell will be joining us next Friday when we take this up again. That's when she was available. Okay. So Mr. Thompson, are you there? We can see your name, but I can't see you. And I don't know if you're on mute or not.
No, I think, here we go. Here.
There you are. Okay.
Perfect.
So this is Senate Government Operations, and we deal with professional regulations
Yes, ma'am.
of many sorts. And so you've never joined our committee before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our committee members introduce themselves to you. And I'm Jeanette White from Windham County.
Nice to meet you, Jeanette.
I'm Anthony Polina from Washington County.
How you
Ryan
doing, Anthony?
Collmore from Rutland County.
Ryan, nice to meet you, sir.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Nice to meet you, Allison.
Keisha Rom from Chittenden County.
Nice to meet you, Keisha.
And along with, we have Lauren Lehman and Lauren Hibbert and Chris Winters, who are from the Office of Professional Regulation
Yes,
and the
ma'am.
Secretary of State's office, and our attorney, Amron Abajola. I don't think I said that right, but
Aberjayli.
Aberjayli.
Daily.
Okay.
And
So if you would like to just kind of
oh, good.
send us what your concerns were, and I know that the Office of Professional Regulation has been working on some proposed language that they will go through with us. But if you'd like to start us off.
Yes, ma'am. I've been working with Lauren for quite a while now. She's been great. We started this actually last year with Carl Demrow. And even before that, we've been trying to get this through for about 12 years now. We've never really had an issue until of lately. The MMA world has exploded. So a lot of promoters have found ways that they can make money. And Vermont being one of those states that's unregulated, they don't have to follow any rules. So some of the first things that we saw happening, the first thing and the whole reason I got into this was my daughter wanted to, my entire family, we've done martial arts our entire life. So my daughter wanted to make her MMA debut at 16 years old. We were kind of against it. But, we had a lot of experience in martial arts and stuff. So we allowed her to do it. She turned 16 on a Wednesday. Saturday, Friday morning, she had her braces off. Saturday, she was fighting in front of 1,000 people at the Barry Auditorium. So the first thing that started to happen that I noticed that I really didn't feel comfortable with was the other girl. I got with the promoter. I said, my daughter fights. My daughter wrestles at, 112 pounds. She's a small girl. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. The fight's going to be at 115. Okay, well, that's not a huge disadvantage. Then about a week before the fight, I contacted the promoter. I said, hey, this girl, there's no way she's 100, she's 115 pounds. She goes, well, I thought the fight was at 115. She's no more than 120. She ended up weighing in, I think, right around 128 pounds. She was 28, 29 years old. It was, and I didn't know anything about matchups or anything like that at the time. So I just thought that they would match my daughter up according to her age, her experience. She had never been in a fight, but they didn't. It was just whoever they could get to fight is who they got to fight. So that was my daughter ended up getting choked unconscious in front of all them people. I wasn't angry about that. I was really angry about the whole mismatch and how there was no regulations and how unsafe it was. It was the first time I had ever been behind the scenes at an MMA event in any way, shape, or form. So we ended up purchasing, the lady ended up selling the promotion and we ended up purchasing in it. Not the actual name. We purchased the cage and the ring. And that's when we decided we're like, things are going to be different. We're not going to do this like this. It's just so unregulated. I was so surprised somebody hadn't gotten killed. Like there was no guidance. There was nothing. I remember asking the promoter, I was like, what do I have to know? What do I have to, no, there is no rules. You're not regulated. Don't worry about it. I was like, oh my God. So the first fight, I remember she was helping me. She was trying to show me the ropes and everything. And they had a young kid. He was 17 years old. His mother didn't want him to fight, but the promoter, she convinced him to. And she goes, well, I'll call this guy from New York. He'll come right over. Another thing I didn't even know, the kid from New York came over, was medically suspended because his whole face had been smashed in a bad accident. So he couldn't get approved to fight in New York. So he'd come here to Vermont to fight because we have no access to the database of suspended fighters because we're not a sanctioned state. So this was really scary to me. And then what happened, it ended up during the fight, the kid got liver kicked and the other guy did a flying knee and absolutely destroyed his nose. I mean, he had to have reconstructive surgery. He was 17 years old. I was like, geez. So I started actually changing the rules so that, because these were amateur fighters, these guys had to work on Monday. You know, these were not professional fighters getting paid to fight, but they just weren't regulated. There was no regulation. So things took a huge turnaround when our family came on. I'm not here to pat myself on the back or anything, but we were so focused on the safety aspect of it that was our main focus. Every show we try to do things different because it was a learning curve for us. Then other promoters saw what they thought that we were making a ton of money. So they just started coming into Vermont. This is when you had a guy that came from New Hampshire. They came up, they set up a cage. They wanted me to be a judge. We went down there. The cage was too big for the building. So there was a steel bar that ran through the middle of the cage. So they wrapped it with towels and tried to have the fight anyway. I was like, we're not down with this. We're leaving. We got to go. They had a fight down in Bennington. Another promoter who's been banned out of New York came over here to Vermont. They put a bunch of 2x4s together, eye rings. They had a fight in the middle of the Bennington Park, charged admission to get into it. At one point, one of the fighters from New York had a guy down. He was beating him. The fighter looks up to the ref and he goes, are you going to stop this? And the ref goes, no. He goes, he's good. He doesn't want to stop it. Well, a fighter's never going to say they want to stop a fight, especially in front of a crowd. So that guy beat him for a little while longer. And finally he got up. He was like, this is ridiculous. I've never been to anything like, and he walked out of the ring, just got up and left the cage. Another guy got hurt inside of the cage. They dragged him out and left him in the park at another area of the park, just left him there. He ended up with like permanent damage to his eye. So then the last, I think everybody knows about the shows in Rutland, how that went down. That was a big to-do with the Vermont Digger and all that. So that's them, that's theirs. All I can do is what we can do, and try to make it as safe as possible for us. But once money's involved, once people think that they can make money, or, you know, then all bets are out the window. You know, we spend a lot of money. We probably spend about $18,000 a show between medical staff, staffing. We actually bring in a sanctioning body from New York. We bring another sanctioning body in because we don't have any sanctioning bodies here in Vermont. So that they bring all their officials, they bring all of the people that check the fighters. They actually look at the cards and approve the bouts, so there's no mismatches. There's not a guy on there that's got 152 fights fighting a guy that's making his debut at 16 or 17 years old. The other thing that we never regulated was kids. I had to talk the other promoter out of letting these two kids beat the crap out of each other. He finally decided just to have a grappling match with them. I didn't agree with it, and I told him that. I expressed that to him, but there's no regulations here. You know, all I can do is give opinions and say I probably wouldn't do that. You know, I told him that I don't want to get too much. I'm not going to make it into like me and him going back and forth, any kind of thing whatsoever like that. I gave him my opinion on what I thought was right and what was wrong, and we didn't see eye to eye on that, on those. So the other thing that we're missing out on is amateur fighters. A lot of what people are seeing these days are huge impacts from CTE, brain injuries, concussions, stuff like that. We're seeing that everywhere across sports. So what a lot of people have started doing is they're now doing less sparring, full contact sparring, saving that for the actual fights. So your brain can only take so many shots. Your brain has 5,000 shots that it can take to the head before you're permanently injured. Now, without us having sanctioning and without Vermont fighters being able to turn professional in Vermont, what happens is they have to leave this state. And so when they leave the state, their fights are no longer recorded. Because we don't have any way to record it. We can't record it with the ABC. They're an unsanctioned fight. So no other states look at it because they won't recognize those fights because they don't know how the fight was put on. It wasn't regulated. It could have been some sort of backyard. So they don't count them. So now you have this guy that could have had 20 amateur fights, can't turn pro in Vermont, has to go over to New Hampshire, go to Maine, go to any of the surrounding states to turn pro. First thing they tell him is you don't have any amateur fights. He says, I just fought 20 fights. You have no amateur fights listed on the ABC website. So without that, you now have to do 10 amateur fights in New York to turn pro in New York. So Vermont fighters are at a huge disadvantage just in that aspect alone because we have no access. We have no path to turn professional, to turn this into. We have a huge wrestling community here, some great wrestlers. This MMA opened up that opportunity for them to make this a career. They can't do that here. But even without all of that, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, somebody else just popped up.
No,
Oh,
I think something just happened.
Okay. The regulations has never been needed as much as it has been now. Before, we got away with it for a long time because there was only one promotion in Vermont and she tried to do it right. So people weren't complaining. People were getting hurt, but they weren't being permanently injured. There's a gentleman out there that has permanent brain injury. He got into a really, really bad motorcycle accident, and I refused to put him on the card because he knows there's no sanctioning in Vermont. So he knows he could actually fight. And I said, absolutely not. You and me both know, because his doctor told him he wouldn't clear him. If he got punched, he could die. So he went to another promoter, and they were going to put him on the card. And thank God COVID happened and all the fights got shut down, because at that point that kid and the kid finally, because he's finally got on meds and got to counseling and stuff like that, realized like what he was doing. He was self-destructing. He didn't care if he lived or died. And so he would have rather died in the cage. Well, that's great. And that's honorable, but that's no fun as a promoter or somebody, a spectator watching that. You know, we're not going there to watch people die. We're going there to watch people express their martial arts, to see which one is a superior art, which athlete is a superior athlete. And more importantly, it's that athlete testing his own skills. I train every day. Even at 47 years old, I'm going to compete in worlds for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu next year. You train all that time and never have an opportunity to go somewhere and test it or test your skills to see if they really work. What ends up happening is you go to a bar, you go drinking. These are different. These are outlets. This is what you end up getting assault charges. That's why we've been trying to work with the kids here in Washington that are in the drug program to get them into training, to get them into the MMAs. They are like the MMA schools around here. There's a bunch of MMA schools that opened up around here. This is a huge outlet. You see these guys that are that have really bad addiction problems. It's an addictive personality. So they get into drugs, but then they get caught, they get in trouble. Their punishment is they're locked down. They're locked in either their house, they have to go to a Zoom meeting, and they sit there and bite their nails. There's nothing they can do. Could you imagine being 20 years old? You're locked in your house with your mother, and they say, don't do anything, don't drink, don't smoke, don't go out, don't do anything. So we're trying to take that energy and put it to good use. We have so many people that were recovering addicts that have just turned their entire lives around through this. It's a great outlet for people. But does anybody have any questions for me?
Just before I go to the committee members, I am going to say that we will hear a lot from people who just want to ban it to begin with because it's considered a brutal sport and maybe not even a sport. But I will say that I grew up in a very nonviolent family, but my father was the amateur boxing champion of the state of of North Dakota.
Wow.
So and at the time they didn't use gloves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a big push to try to get bare knuckle fighting here in Vermont.
And he was a nonviolent person and he survived. And I grew up in a household where we didn't have television, but we listened to every boxing match on the radio. And so while I don't do that anymore, and I'm not so sure that I think it's a great sport to be beating up on each other, I'm not going to be judgmental about other people's
it's funny you say that because most of the martial artists, a lot of guys, even the guys I trained with, have never been in a fight. But if they had to, they absolutely could, but they've never. It's just no reason to. They train every day. They do. There's just no reason to.
Well, he was a little wiry guy, and anyway, so I just say that because I know that there will be a general outcry from people about it being a brutal endeavor, and we shouldn't even be allowing it. So with that, and so I needed to say that. Senator Clarkson?
Thank you, Rex. I don't even know what mixed martial arts are. I mean, I know about karate, I know about jujitsu, I know about taekwondo, I know about boxing, I know about wrestling. All of those are regulated. All of those have rules about how to compete. All of those are very well organized. I have no idea what mixed martial arts are. So I wish you'd begun with it. It does seem pretty tough. I mean, you talk about fighting in cages, and I mean, it just sounds so. Anyway, I'd love to have you explain what it is.
Okay, so first of all, mixed martial arts is a mixture. It's a mixture of ground fighting, striking. Unlike karate and stuff like karate's not. I did taekwondo. I did taekwondo for years, so I know that circuit. They do not do full contact fighting in the state of Vermont. It is not regulated that way whatsoever. Boxing is the only thing that's regulated in the state of Vermont. Other than that, you have karate schools. So what they do is you take a guy. The way it originally started was with the Gracies, Hoist Gracies. They wanted to prove that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the best martial arts against all other martial arts. So what mixed martial arts is supposed to represent the best of those arts against another art. Plain and simple. You'll take a guy that's a wrestler, and he will go, and you'll see how a wrestler can do against a striker. But MMA has evolved so much these days that now everybody trains in a wide range. They'll train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They'll have their dedicated art, like they may be a karate practitioner, they may be into Taekwondo, they may be a Jiu-Jitsu guy. That may be their base, but then they'll train in other arts in order to compete, to make it as real life as possible. The Gracies, when they started Jiu-Jitsu, it was based on a real life self-defense art. So they created competitions to show how effective and to make sure, because the problem that traditional martial arts have always had is when you get into a real fight, it's not effective because you haven't practiced it really. You have practiced moves, you've practiced, but you've never done your randori, you've never done a full contact spar. So I think that's the biggest difference. MMA is more of a self-defense base, showing you how these arts work in a real life fight situation. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So it's blending all of the arts we talked about, and we talked about them as art. I thought, I mean, you know, you think of wrestling at college and boxing, not so much as a university sport, but you think of some of these as university sports. They are regulated in the university setting. So some of them are regulated in
wrestling is,
with which they're offered, Great.
So before I go to any further here, what I want to do is, Mr. Samsel, did you join us about the notary issue? You're muted.
My apologies. Yes, I joined in terms of the notary.
Oh,
So
great. We had a good conversation.
What were you saying, Allison?
No, I said you missed our good conversation, Joe. We're sorry it's great to see you, but we just.
I picked up a little bit on the MMA, so.
So what we're doing with notaries is, because it won't come up for relicensing or re-registering again until 2023.
Yes.
And any changes we make to the system is both time consuming and costly for the Office of Professional Regulation. We have decided that we are not going to do anything about it this year because it's not going to affect anybody until 2023. So in the next session of this biennium, so starting in January of 2022, we'll then look at whether there need to be any other changes to the notary law and try to make any changes all at one time instead of just picking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. We'll do it all at once. So we're done with that topic, unfortunately.
Okay, it's been something that I've been working on since 2012, and it's changed back and forth. It's changed between the Department of Corrections being in ex officio status, and it's so I'm not sure how it's changed over time, but it's certainly something that's affected the Department of Corrections.
Yep. So we will take it up in January of 2022, and you certainly are welcome to stay with us to talk about mixed martial arts.
Nope, that's perfectly fine, and certainly I'm happy to testify. I plan to be around then, so
okay.
God willing, so I'll testify then.
And I'll follow up with you, Joe, because I read your email to everybody as we framed up the issue. But okay. I'll follow up with some of the questions we have for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Sorry about that little interlude there, but I thought it was important to let Mr. Samsel know that that he didn't have to sit around and wait for something that wasn't going to happen until January of 2021 or 2.
So
okay.
I would like to bring up because Senator Allison Clark there. So One of the things that with the amateur fighting, there's a lot of rules with the amateur fighting. If you see unlike professional fighting. So if you have less than 3 fights, you have to wear shin pads. If you have less than 4 fights, you are not allowed to do ground and pound on the ground to the head. There is no headshots. ABC has a set of rules. So when your state is regulated, it's a very strict set of rules that everybody has to abide by. Those are the minimum rules. Like we use USMTA, they are a bit stricter with their rules, which is fine. But there's a lot of rules out there for the fighter safety when it's regulated like that, especially for the amateur fighting. There's no elbows. You can't hit anything that is bare, especially an elbow or a knee, because those can cut people. And the last thing that we're trying to do is have somebody cut in their amateur career, because that could affect their professional career. So that's a huge thing, is not allowing, because we used to have a problem at the auditorium. People would get mad. They'd be like, oh, you stopped that fight too early. Nope. We do not stop that fight. It's very, very clear. If there's any inclination you're not protecting yourself, the fight is stopped. This is explained to the fighters during the rules meeting so that they know we are going to stop this. Any inclination that you're in any kind of trouble, we stop it. It's an amateur. This is not out to beat the crap out of you. This is to find out who trained, who knows their art better, and who was the victor that day without any kind of permanent injury. Yes,
Senator Clarkson.
Thanks, Rex. It's just helpful as we sort of frame up this universe. So do you have a notion of how many Vermonters participate in mixed martial art competitions? That's one, what's the universe of people that are involved?
Oh my God, it's huge right now in the state.
Well, huge. Anyway, and so that's my first question. And the second question is, do you have a state that you think has the ideal set of regulations in place to oversee this that we could look at?
Well, before we go there, I will say that Lauren has been working on this and has some draft language for us.
Okay, great. So how big is the universe of?
Okay, so just in every karate studio, every taekwondo studio, every jiu-jitsu studio, every MMA gym in the state of Vermont has fighters that fight on our cards. Everybody, because they represent their gyms. So when I put a fight together, that's a fight card. And so
you mean it's like a program?
Yes, ma'am. It lists everybody that's fighting that night. It's just that's a fight card. When I put my fight card together. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I never thought of it, but yes. So that's a big thing. That's a huge promotion for these gyms, dojos, because what they do is, this is another competition. They show up, they bring their best guy from that gym. The other guy, their competition brings their best guy, and we have this friendly competition. Everybody thinks it's not friendly, but all of these fighters are friends with each other. We all cross-train with each other. It's a really weird situation, like most civilians don't understand, but it's that warrior culture. We all get along. It's weird.
So would you say it's 10,000 people that are involved in this in Vermont? 10, 15? You don't.
Can I just try and clarify that a little bit, maybe? The people who actually have participated in an MMA event might be a different number than the people, because all the people who are, from what I understood Mr. Thompson to just say, all the people who are training in any of these arts are eligible and can end up doing an MMA event. So all of those people can be considered part of the universe of people that are part of the MMA world. But the number of people who've actually participated in an MMA event is a subset of that. Does that clarify that at all?
Well, I'd say the people who choose to do the fighting is that universe, not necessarily the whole gym.
Well, that's the thing, is most people inside of a gym are training for some reason, and whether they are thinking about it now or thinking about it later, a lot of times that's the goal inside of those gyms. So if you have 40, 50 guys in every single gym, potentially you could have, because there's different classes. Everything is broke down to weight classes, age brackets, experience. So there's like I said, I compete in worlds. I don't go down there and compete against 20-year-old guys. I go down and I compete against other 47-year-old men that are my age, my height, and my skill level. So potentially but my last show, I have no problem filling out a card. I can't tell you exactly. I can get into one of my Excel spreadsheets and I have lists and lists of names and coaches of people that have inquired. I have people all the way from Canada inquiring to come down to get on cards. The last show I had, there was probably between 1,500 and 1,800 people inside the auditorium.
So I'm going to suggest that unless we have any more specific questions for Mr. Thompson about this, that we jump to Lauren, and I'm glad to hear that you've been working with the office. I had not realized that before. I knew that Lauren had been
Lauren's
working.
awesome.
Yes, we agree. So, but so does that make sense, committee, to jump to Lauren and see what they've been working on and come up with in terms of regulation?
Yep.
I see people nodding their heads and thumbs up. Okay.
In this
Great.
case, Madam Chair, just to be clear, the Lauren who's awesome is Lauren Lehman.
You both are. You just both are.
Why
Except
having two is great, because you can all get the compliment.
And you come first, Lauren Hibbert, alphabetically.
okay. Would you like to somebody start going, giving us some potential solutions to this issue?
Certainly. So my name's Lauren, for the record, my name's Lauren Lehman. I'm an attorney with the Office of Professional Regulation. As Rex said, we've been working with him since, and former Representative Demrow since 2018, when we first had some fights brought to our attention. A slight correction in that MMA is technically regulated in Vermont. It is included in the definition of boxing match. And it was included there starting in 2011. Some further back history, in 2001, the state decided to get rid of our version of the Athletic Commission, which was the Boxing Commission, and that was disbanded, and the profession, the registration and licensing was transferred over to OPR at that time. So many states, as you know, is often the story, have an additional layer of bureaucracy than Vermont. They have an independent athletic commission that monitors, oversees MMA, attends all the fights, ensures all the rules are followed, then submits results of the matches or contestant statuses to a national database. We don't have that infrastructure here. So OPR's approach is going to be our proposal is somewhat similar to what we've based it on other states, but we've also done an OPR licensing lens on it. So in 2016, the definition of boxing match was modified to include MMA. Unfortunately, the rest of the statute was not updated. So we still, in the rest of the statutes, if you read it literally, it says that all MMA fights, all MMA fighters have to register using national boxing IDs, have to use boxing rules in the ring. All of these things are incongruous and really just, it's round hole, square, square peg, round hole. So this leaves us in a sticky spot when we have some of the behaviors that Rex shared with you in misconduct that we've seen in the past 2 years. We can say, hey, you're engaged in unauthorized practice of this sport because you don't have a license. but also we can't tell them how to get licensed because it's really impossible. So that's just really put us in a sticky spot. This past year, we had the additional fun of, and that was sarcasm, the additional factor of COVID-19. And so we were able to use some authorities from Act 91 and Act 140 from last year to Director Hibbert sent a letter with, in coordination with the Attorney General's office, and cease and desist, but that was based on more of the violation of the COVID-19 regulations than of the state law. And then we are also, there's unauthorized conduct charges pending against that individual.
This is the Rutland situation.
That's the Rutland situation. The flip side of that, however, is that we can't tell this individual how to get licensed. We can't tell Mr. Thompson how to get licensed and to practice in compliance with the law. So flipping back to how does OPR approach this? You know, I've relied on Rex a lot for background information. I've also done extensive research on my own and read a lot. And I think what we would propose is that the state create an authority for OPR to establish rules and regulations for these fights. And for contestants. There would be 3 forms of licensure in our proposal. One would be for the fighters, the contestants. One would be for the promoters like Rex, who are really facilitating the fight and promoting it and getting the ticket sales, etc. And one would be for participants, so referees, judges, seconds, corners, all those folks who are there and are participating in the match. There would also be permits, event licenses. So before you're going to have an event, the promoter would have to notify the office, submit the proper documentation. We would have to have that on record. The rules that we would propose, rather than doing in statute, but adopting in rule, would be a lot of what Rex is so in the know about. Conduct of fights, medical examinations, who should be on scene. We can have that scaffolding in statute, but I think to really have a detailed expert take on what needs to happen in the fundamental rules in the state, we should have people like Rex at the table helping us do rules, and we should have the nimbleness that rules allow. So I know there's a national body, it's an Association of Boxing Commissions, but they also have MMA rules. They have uniform rules. Those get modified pretty regularly. Some states just defer to those rules. I'm hesitant to do just that, but you know, that's a discussion we could have. But because sometimes they modify the rules in ways we don't like, but if we say we just take these rules, then we're stuck with them. I know back in 2016, they eliminated one of these, a form of foul in New Jersey, which had the first MMA rules, in which I think Rex actually participated in developing. They have excellent, extensive rules, comprehensive rules, because they have a lot of MMA fighting. They have a lot of money coming in for it. So, you know, they didn't want to take those uniform rules because they wanted to keep the foul. And that's kind of the tension that we would see if so we propose, rather than in statute saying we take the uniform rules, that in statute we say OPR will develop these rules about conduct of fights, about medical examinations, all that information. The one distinction, and I'll stop after this because I know it's too much for anybody to talk about, but the one distinction is that this is the OPR lens on things. When somebody, it would be unprofessional conduct in our proposal for a fighter to fight while suspended in another state. The ramifications for that are what we as OPR are established and created to do, which is ding your license, revoke your license, suspend your license. We couldn't get in the ring and say, you can't fight today. That's kind of where the limits are. And I want to hear and talk to more about Rex, and I think we could do that in the rulemaking or even before we send you language about how to make people eligible to work in other states without having OPR staff updating fight results after every fight. Because that's not really a function that we do play, but other states have athletic commissions that do that function. So, you know, kind of figuring out how to strike that balance, facilitate careers for amateurs to professionals, ensure safety, also ensure no financial advantages are taken. So another provision we have in our draft would be promoters cannot have a financial stake in a fighter. Referees or participants in a match referees or judges in a match or doctors can't have a stake in the fighter, a financial stake in the fighter. In that situation, they're going to fudge things to get their fighter in there. And so we need to add that financial protection. Medical insurance is another consideration that we were thinking about. So, you know, there's lots of details to be worked out. And there's definitely some public safety concerns. We feel it should be regulated. And we clearly need some amendments to our existing statutes in order to do that sort of comprehensive regulation.
I will say that this is the first time I have ever heard anybody refer to the rulemaking process as nimble. So I guess it's all relative compared to legislation. It might be.
Yeah, it is. Maybe it's relative.
Ma'am, we have most of this stuff. We have it all written up because Chris Ballard, who's not here today, wrote the legislation for Nevada and New Jersey. So we already have those rule sets. We have a lot of that stuff already down there. And anytime that you use a third party sanctioning, it makes no difference on if the promoter is somehow connected to a fighter in any way, because promoters do manage fighters. That's a misconception. I used to manage fighters. But when you use a third party, they bring all of the officials. They have to approve the fights. They have, you know what I'm saying? It's hard to do. It would be hard to do something shady, but to take that away, because when you do promoting, one of the things I'm promoting is usually managing fighters.
So, Lauren.
So just to that point, I think, you know, I think in our letter to you, I misused the term third party sanctioning body. What I had been envisioning in what that body would be doing that updating fight results and checking suspension statuses and filing any updates to those after the fight. I think
they do that.
Yeah, so that's great. I think where OPR might differ a little bit is we would like to set one standard set of rules for the state rather than using a third party sanctioner, because it makes expectations very clear. It takes OPR out of the business of assessing those third-party sanctioners and offering like a whole separate license for them to make sure they're meeting the qualifications. And also we have a policy that has to underlie all of our regulations, which is it has to be the minimum necessary to protect the public. And so if we're using a third party that's rules are going to vary, it puts us in
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Of trying to enforce that.
So what you're proposing to us is that we would put in the statutes the ability for OPR to work with the appropriate parties and develop the rules. And there would be some guidance in the statute around the types of rules that you would be. Is that what you're?
Yes. So Senator White, that's exactly what I'm proposing. And this is hot off the presses because I've used President's Day weekend to kind of pull all these thoughts together. But as Rex has noted, we used model laws. I looked at New Jersey as foremost because it's the first and the most comprehensive. Nevada does a kind of separate angle where it has those third party sanctioning bodies. So I stuck with New Jersey. And then I looked at other states that have similar populations to Vermont: North Dakota, Wyoming, Maine, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and kind of took a lot of the language from those states and kind of made it Vermont specific. So the rules that we would be asking to do would be there's a whole list, from medical examinations to conduct of fights to licensing requirements, etc. So,
So committee, Senator Polina?
I'm just a little, I don't know whether confused is the right word, but I'm not sure whether you're saying we would end up with a commission or an association or some governing body that would govern the sport, or whether it would be done through OPR. I feel like I'm hearing two different things. Which one would be the case?
So in our bill, it would be OPR. OPR would do it. We would appoint advisors. It would be an advisor profession. And we'd have 2 advisors advise us on it. And then we'd go through the rulemaking process. The way I've structured the statute draft bill, and of course it doesn't have to be the way it is, but would be a licensing process. We would license the participants, the fighters, the promoters, and the repercussions for violation of the rules or the law would be a license approach. You'd get suspended from your license would be revoked, conditioned, fined. So it's a very OPR-centric approach to it, but that is kind of what we can offer to this.
So that would be the kind of the role that you imagine a boxing association or sanctioning organization, that's the role that they would normally play. You're saying OPR would play that role.
So the only difference, the biggest distinction is with an athletic commission, they're present at the fights. They're not present for the medical examinations and the weigh-ins. They would then go back and submit the results of the fight. So they're really sports centric, and that's what they do. So they're not just focused on the licensing, they're focused on being an active participant in the actual match. I think OPR has proposed inspections for the event license for each event. There would be an inspection of the ring and the facilities beforehand, but we would not, and we do that something similar with demolition derbies at the fair and with motor vehicle racing, we go and inspect. And this would be a similar thing, but we would not have an OPR person present at the fight to make sure. The mechanism of enforcement there would be complaints. And we've seen in the last year that there is good oversight in the community and people are willing to come, and Rex, and others have come to us and said that we've seen this is inappropriate. And so we'd be, just as we do with all of our other professions, offer some level of trust that rules will be complied with. And if they're not, OPR will be notified.
Any other questions? Senator Colomar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Lauren, normally, if we were going to add an occupation in Vermont, we would go through the sunrise procedure where there's a study and all. I'm hearing that you sort of already have done this and that you're going to move immediately to the licensing level. And I'm not taking a position on that, but I'm just curious about that. And I also have a question about the cost involved to do all this, and how are we going to pay for it?
Sure. So with regard to the sunrise analysis, the figuring out, we already regulate MMA in Vermont. So, we kind of worked from the assumption that that determination had already been made, that some sort of licensure was necessary to protect the health, safety, or welfare of the public in Vermont. I did think about that this weekend quite a bit, but I think both because it's already been regulated and included in the laws in 2016, it's almost as if we're taking a part of an existing law and making its own separate law. And so that determination has already been made. I think if we were to do an analysis, it would be somewhat of a kick the can down the road situation, because it's very clear to us from the last year that there is demonstrable public threat, a risk from not regulating this profession. And in the 3 elements of the profession, there really are 3 sub-professions within it. So, we would do the analysis, present it to you, and then you guys would make that determination ultimately, of course. But it seems to OPR, at least, that there is a public risk from not doing this. And so I took, what we had in place already, took the scaffolding of what we had for boxing and and applied the appropriate standards to the field based on New Jersey and other states. Regarding resources, I can talk, I'll defer to Lauren on office resources for charges. I looked at other states for fighters, for everybody who's not making money here, it would be $25. For the promoter, it would be $500. Those are the fees that are for boxers right now. There's also a surety bond that's also still in the boxing statute, where a $10,000 surety bond to ensure that taxes are paid, medical insurance is paid, fighters are rules are complied with. And then there's a 5% gate tax is how it's referred to in the statute right now. But this is similar with other states as well, where within 72 hours after a fight, a promoter would submit a report to the office with ticket sales information and gross receipts information, and 5% would be sent to the office to pay for regulation. And that would be put in the professional regulation fund to pay for the regulation of the profession.
So I'll ask Lauren, would those fees be enough to cover the administrative costs?
For the record, Lauren Hibbert, Director of the Office of Professional Regulation. I think so. The biggest cost for the office will be inspection. We will inspect the sites of fights, just for some of the reasons that Mr. Thompson delineated, unsafe sites, for making sure that the location itself is safe. So that will be a cost, but I think that we'd be able to accommodate this without additional staff, and certainly without an additional investigator. That we will have obviously some system changes and operational changes, but I think would be able to absorb those.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions or thoughts?
If I could reiterate, so talking about the money, if you take 5% of the gate, that alone is over $2,000 on every single one of my shows. That's more than me going out and hiring a sanctioning body to come here and just regulate it. So I do 4 shows a year at the Barry Auditorium, and I'm only one promoter. So we'll talk about that at a later time, but when you're talking about, that's a lot of money. That doesn't include, so you have 2 corner guys, each one of your corner guys. I don't know if we don't use a third party sanctioning, we don't have an athletic commission here. I don't know where we're going to get our officials, because they have to be, because when you use a third party sanctioning, they bring all the officials. So now you have the licensing. It takes about 200 people to run a show, a legit show. So between fighters, staff, those people will be getting licenses at whatever that cost is. So there's 200 people that you're gonna, if I have 20 people, 20 fights, that's 40 fighters. That's 80, that's 120 people that have to buy licenses just to come there for each show times 4 shows. So the money adds up quick. You're going to see a lot of small promoters aren't even going to be able to afford to do this.
Lauren?
So the boxing, I'm sorry, the boxing, wrong thing. The contestant license would be good for 1 year.
Okay.
The promoter, the underlying promoter license and the participant's license would be good for 2 years. And then every event has to have a separate license.
Right. That's
And every
understandable.
event license, I think, is $250. So that would be more reasonable.
That's fair.
The gate tax is actually already in law and is similar to all
Is
our
that for a professional fight or an amateur fight?
professional. So that's another good
Okay.
professional. It would be for a professional fight, and it's also in other states around here.
No, that's fair. If it's a professional fight, absolutely. It's different. It's a different animal.
Different things. So amateur fights, we don't draw a lot of distinctions in the draft rule. What I've put in so far is there's a limit. You have to be 18 to be in a professional fight. That's consistent with surrounding states. Otherwise, it would also put to rule developing amateur standards. And I think Dr. Bell will speak more to those amateur needs next week.
Perfect.
Senator White is that.
So would it be possible to have a draft by next Friday and then we can, and then if there's anybody else that we can put the word out and anybody else that needs to testify. Is that fair? By next Friday, Senator
Certainly.
Clarkson?
Thanks. Thank you, Lauren. That was very helpful to sort of frame up what we're doing. I guess I'd like to know, how many promoters are there now in Vermont?
2. Well, one has been shut down until I don't know. He got he's the one that got the cease and desist. The other one moved out of Vermont. That's XCP. I don't know if he's coming back into Vermont or not. I'm sure once the sanctioning goes through, Cage Wars will probably move over here. You'll probably see 3 or 4 big promotions come into the state. Right now, without Fight Night Promotions or XCP, right now I'm the only one that's set up ready to go. So, but if nobody takes up the Rutland area, that's where you'll probably see Cage Wars move into there.
But is it a little bit like zoning for the towns that don't have zoning? If you don't have zoning, it makes it really difficult for people to know what they can do and what they can't do in certain places. And so they tend to not. And if you don't have regulation, it makes it difficult for people to know what they can do and can't do. And so the good promoters would not necessarily come.
Right.
I don't know why I thought of linking it to zoning, but
Yes, that was a puzzling one.
It actually brought up a good point, which is, I think as part of our proposal for licensing, or at least in rules, we would have some elements of crowd control and zoning from the municipality where it's going to be held. So, you know, that the select board or the aldermans are aware of it. And then in terms of coordinating by next week, we have a draft. I think we need to do some internal review of it really quickly before we start circulating it. But Rex, I told Rex I'd send him that. So as soon as we do that, I'll coordinate with him to make sure we're as close to being on the same page as we can be as well.
and we're not talking about this Friday. We're
Right.
talking about a week from this Friday. So I believe that's the 26th. So
We would be great with, I think, Lauren and I, we already have a language. We just need to do internal finality and finalizing and then circulate.
Now, when talking about venues, though, there's only a few places in Vermont that can house a cage and people and all that stuff. There's not very many of them. And I signed we're signing a 3-year contract with the auditorium. So we're not going anywhere out of there. We don't travel with our cage. It's strictly for the citizens of Barrie we've been bringing it into Barrie for quite a while now, and we're not going to be moving it out of there.
Senator Collmore, did you have a?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Rex, I initially got the impression that this was sort of the Wild West when you mentioned that we had no regulation at all. But now hearing your testimony, you're kind of like the only guy in town. So who are we likely to hear from that's opposing this?
So originally the only person that ever opposed this was the other promoter. Because once you become regulated, you no longer hold the reins. You can't make lopsided matches. You can't overlook blood work. You can't, a guy may have hepatitis. This has been huge in our state. Well, I didn't bring my blood work to the weigh-in. All right, well, the fight's happening. It's going on anyway. When you have sanctioning, all this stuff is handed in ahead of time. So same thing. So he was the only person that ever was against the sanctioning was the other promoter. Even the promoter of XCP wanted to get sanctioning in this state. The one that did it with the bar through the cage. Even he said it. He was like, I would absolutely do this in this state if they had. That's why he went to New Hampshire. So,
thank you.
Yeah, there was only that. That's the only person that I know of.
Any other questions or thoughts or concerns? Senator Clarkson? You're muted.
I'm trying to be better. I'm just curious, Rex, what's the breakdown between men and women in your contestants?
Oh, that's a great question. Women have started exploding onto the scene. I actually, right before the COVID, I was trying to do an all-female card because I have so many female fighters that are coming up through now. It's no longer just a man's sport, especially with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So one thing I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I advocate it for women. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was an art that was specifically made by a frail old man so that he could protect himself against large, bigger opponents. So that's why so many females have just gravitated towards Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then you have the savage women that want to be Muay Thai kickboxers, and you have them too. But it's I could fill an entire card with nothing but female fighters right now, tomorrow.
Have you had an all-female fight yet?
No, ma'am. That because I invited Chelsea Tucker down. Chelsea Tucker trains out of Joe Lozon, UFC fighter Joe Lozon's gym out of Massachusetts. She came. The energy was incredible. The people went nuts over it. So I've just been especially with my daughter being a fighter too. That's been a huge. That's one of my goals to have an all-female card. Absolutely.
Ah, great. And my last question for you today is, has your daughter recovered from that?
My daughter, so my daughter has recovered. That was a learning experience for her. She never wants to fight again, but she still does train with us. Our entire family, my wife trains with me. We all train at Granite City MMA right in Montpelier. They produce a lot of champions out of there. But I do it mainly for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu these days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anybody else? Okay, so we will put this on, as soon as you get this, get a draft. I mean, not as soon as you get a draft, but we'll put it on for Friday, the 26th. So it would be good to have the draft a few days before that, so that if we have, and we'll post it. So I think can we post, we have such bizarre rules around what we can post and when we can post it, but I would like to get this out there so that people can have a chance to respond to it, to see it, and we'll make sure that it gets on our agenda, that we're taking it up, that there is a draft. And if anybody, even if we're not allowed to post it yet because it's not a document for that day, I mean, really weird rules. What we'll do is, if anybody contacts us and wants to see it and testify, we'll email it to them. Is that okay? So I would like to have people be able to see it so that they can come and weigh in.
So the Chris Ballard, if you could get this out to like the gyms and stuff, because they're the ones, it's their fighters that are fighting on the card. It's most important for them guys. I mean, I'm a promoter, whether you guys sanction or not, we're probably still going to have fights. We've been having them. It's really important for these gyms and the fighters. This is most important for them.
Is there some kind of an association?
If you send it out to Chris Ballard, who wasn't able to come here today,
okay.
If you send it to Chris, he'll make sure to get it out. Yes, he absolutely, he's been in here for 36 years in this, in the MMA community or the martial arts community.
Good. Okay.
And then Senator White, there's a process question as well. We obviously have proposed language, but our letter to, we're not sure if you would like it to go as a committee bill or if you'd like us to find a sponsor or how you'd like to.
I think that our thought, that was a pretty stupid statement, but our thought was that, I believe that our thought was that we would attach it to the OPR bill. If that works for OPR, and I think it might, but I'd like to get all the testimony done. I have no idea when crossover is going to be. So if we can get some testimony and get it pretty much wrapped up, then we can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll see you all next Friday, a week from Friday. We'll see some of you before then. We are dealing with elections on this Friday, I believe. So we will see some of you then.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.